Hey, it's happening Tuesday night. KHOP88. Marnie Glickman joining us from Northern California. Marnie, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to talk about skiing and snow on this very hot California day.
Tell us again, Marnie, what's the temperature out there?
Well, it's 80 degrees for the Hopkins High alum in Marin County, and we are loving every minute of it.
Fantastic. All right, well, joining us this week from Denver, Colorado, Glenn Johnson, and riding along with Glenn is repeat second-time guest. We've got a few members of the Second-Time Club now. From Minnetonka, Minnesota, David Green. Great to see you guys.
Good to see you guys.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We were just talking a little bit about skiing because that's sort of what brought you guys together for the show. Glenn, of course, was the state. Okay, you have to help us with the particulars. Was there you were in my mind you were the state skiing champion, downhill skiing champion when we were seniors. Was there more than one category, or was it just slalom? That's what everybody did, and you won.
It was just one category. You got it right.
Okay. Walk us through how early you were, how young you were when you first learned to ski. How big a part of skiing was your life, and when did you decide you wanted to like race and go fast?
Well, I think I got into skiing, I think parenting in the 70s was any way you could basically get rid of your kids. And my parents would drop me off at the ski resort when I was very young. And I would spend the entire day skiing by myself in Western Wisconsin and Afton Alps and all through there. So then that evolved into, I think what they called ski jammers, if I got that right. We started skiing on Saturdays. And then as I progressed and had somewhat of an aptitude for it, I just kind of advanced up into racing and then did fairly well at that. And then moved into what they called USAA, which was a little bit advanced portion of that. And then that was where you really got focused and started going to camps and things like that. And then high school skiing came up. And so I skied really in two divisions. I skied in the USSA division, and then I skied in the high school team as well. So both of those. And then, so it's been my whole life pretty much.
Tell us about when you're learning how to ski slalom. I think a lot of people who don't understand skiing at all is like you just point the skis downhill. What's so hard about that? What in particular are you thinking about and doing and concentrating on when you're skiing a slalom course?
That's a good question. Slalom is, so you have four disciplines and each one has turns that are progressively further and further apart. So slalom would be the short, quick turns, and the gates, as they're called, or the poles, are coming at you very quickly. So there's a lot of reaction and a lot of looking ahead 2 or 3 gates. The sport has changed a lot over the years. Back when David and I did it, it was kind of a there was kind of a smash-up derby and with poles flying everywhere, and it was a very physical sport. A lot of injuries with poles in the face.
When we first started, sorry to interrupt you, Glenn.
Yeah,
poles were made out of bamboo, unless the school could afford breakaway gates. And the breakaway gates had a hinge that, as you hit them, they'd flop and then come back up. And when we first started, and Glenn was on the ski team in 8th grade. He was on the high school ski team in 8th grade, mind you. They didn't have that. The school didn't afford it yet, and they weren't circulating, and they were bamboo, and those things would shatter and they would whap you, but anyway, continue. And they progressed into more safety.
Yeah, so as the technique kind of advanced to the point where they needed to change to breakaway, we would all have like padded gloves and shin guards, and so it was a very physical sport for slalom. And then as you got up to giant slalom, it was a lot more technical, and then downhill, of course, was primarily for speed.
Okay, David, what is giant slalom versus slalom?
As he was saying, essentially slalom is You've got gates much closer together. It's about
Okay.
turns, getting off your edges. You're trying to get from point A to point B in the quickest fashion and break the gates, break the gate. Giant slalom, now they spread them apart further. So now it's more speed and now it's more gradual turn, not gradual turns, but the gates are spaced further apart. And then there's super G, which is kind of a cross between giant slalom and downhill. And then downhill they're far spread apart and you're going as fast as you can, like bombing down, what is it? 9, what's the ninth, peak 9 at Breckenridge, bombing from top to bottom that we did.
Yeah, peak 9, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
So Green, presuming that Glenn was the best skier on the Hopkins ski team,
Hands down.
What made Glenn a much better skier than, say, you or some of the other guys on the team?
I'm glad you asked that because I've thought about that for decades. Right. We had some good skiers. Glenn was 1, Halverson was 2, and then Charlie Adair and I were rotating between 3. But Glenn still beat all of us by 1.5 to 2 seconds every time. And that is a humongous margin when you're talking skiing. And I think part of was Glenn was good at it. That's, that helps. But Glenn, as you know, Glenn, he's got a lack of, in a good way, the fear factor, right? It's the you've got to be a little bit reckless. You have to be a little out of control in your precision in order to be successful. And that's what Glenn had more than, for me, for sure. In a nutshell, right? You have to have contained recklessness. Does that sound fair, Glenn?
Yeah, and I also had the opportunity to go to camps and things that most of the people on the high school team didn't have. So I had a lot more opportunity too.
I would say that I skied USSA though for a season too. That made me a lot better of a skier, but I still didn't have the X factor.
Yeah, and coaching is a big factor, and being videotaped and a lot of that stuff. So all that plays into it.
True.
Where did you guys go? So did you ski every day then in the winter when you were on the team? Did you guys get on a bus and go to a hill, or drive out to, where'd you go? Buck Hill?
So I skied every day. I trained with my other team, I believe 3 days a week, and then I skied all week, and we would race all weekend. And then I think high school practice was 3 times a week.
4 days a week.
4 days a week. Okay.
Yep.
And then we would race once a week.
Were you with Neil Atkins in USSA? Neil?
No, I did not race with Neil. Neil was the Highland Hills coach.
Right.
I was on the ski hut ski team.
Right.
At Buck Hill.
So that's where you did the Hopkins did the Hopkins team have a home court? Like, did you ski most of your time at Buck Hill?
We split between Buck Hill and Highland. Depending on schedule.
Gotcha. Any experience skiing after high school? Did you continue on in this, either one of you?
I did not. I went to college to be a pilot at the University of North Dakota.
Yeah.
And ended up with a business degree, but I made a promise to myself that when I was done with college, I would move to Colorado and be a ski bum, which I did end up doing for 2 years.
Yeah. So when you say ski bum, what's that life like? Were you working at the resort, or?
So I spent 1 season as a ski instructor for Copper Mountains Resort. And then the next 1.5 years, I worked as a kind of a freelance ski instructor. So I worked at a ski resort and I would solicit lessons on the side for cash.
Nice.
It wasn't a bad way to live.
No.
So yeah, and then I mean, when you live in a ski town, it's kind of a barter town anyway. Money's sort of irrelevant. Wherever you work or whatever is kind of your currency. So yeah, that was ski bum in the early 90s. Was, in fact, I lived with a lot of high school or Hopkins graduates for a lot of that time. So it was a fun experience.
Dave, did you visit Glenn out in Denver at this time of his life when he was living the dream out there?
I did, and that was what sort of reinvigorated my. I mean, it's like riding a bike. Once you've spent the time skiing and put that time in, that Glenn obviously more than I did, but once you've got it, you've got it. You've skied, and like I said, I didn't do it for the longest time. But on a side note, to what you were saying about skiing in the future, when I went to Madison, Jason, I knew they had the Badgers had a club team. You were part of the Badgers, but it wasn't like you were on the Badgers, basketball team.
Yeah, not a varsity sport.
Yeah, you would ski against Michigan, you'd ski against all the Big Ten schools, and I thought about it, and I talked to the captain. I actually went to a dryland training. And then I was like, I'm here for school and I don't want to pinch my parents for like, hey, mom and dad, because I was already in college. So I didn't do it. And that's a regret. But neither here nor there. But Glenn brought me out there. And I think it was in like 94, right? I'm sure it was 94. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm never going to not ski again. We had so much fun. And I saw the life he was living. My hair was down to here. It was a good time.
Yeah. So Glenn, you're back out in Denver. And I tell this story all the time. A friend of mine moved to Denver because he loved skiing and he wanted to ski more. And now he never skis. He has a daughter who's about 13 and they live in Evergreen. And he's like, God, I just can't even get on the road. Like if he can pull together some overnights, they do it in a similar way that I would if I was going out to Denver to ski for a long weekend, right? They got to get a place to stay and go to the mountain. How much do you ski out there now? And what's that situation like?
I don't ski very much now. Denver, ironically, is a terrible place to live if you want to be a skier. There's basically one way up to the mountains. I mean, there's others, but there's one primary way, and it's jammed with traffic, and it's very difficult to get up. So you can't get off work Friday and go ski on the weekend and come back Sunday night. It's just not feasible. So, but after I lived the ski bum life, I went back to Minneapolis for 12 years and then moved back to Western Colorado. I lived up in the mountains for 10 years or so.
Okay.
And during that time, I skied like 150 days a year for a decade. So I got my fill. Good.
Any injuries in that time? I mean, it seems like skiing is safer now, but back in the day, it was like every skier you knew had messed up knees or something, right?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate on injuries, although I did just have a hip replacement in September, which was a result of that. So, but yeah, no, I never had any acute injuries.
I would say partially it's because he's a good skier, and that's part of it. But yeah, I'm lucky. I have a bad left knee, probably from skiing, but nothing catastrophic.
No replacements yet for you.
Well, the doctor says you're in line for a left knee replacement, but that's beside the point. It'll happen when it happens. Glenn, we got to talk about your hip in a second after we get off this thing.
Yeah, that's rough though. We're starting to hear this from our people. Little, these surgeries that we used to think was like old people stuff. That's now we're right there. A guy I know who swam in college here, both of his hips have been replaced.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean that he just hammered for years and years of his life, and he's like, yeah, there's a price for that eventually. Plus, again, when you can't, I mean, it's good to hear that interesting to hear that you went through these, these sort of training programs, Glenn, because I think that when a lot of kids our age as athletes, there wasn't a lot of training in particular, certainly not a lot of weight training or, strength and agility, things like that. It was like you were athletic, you wanted to do it, you practiced that sport a lot, but you didn't really do a lot to prepare your body for wear and tear. David, when you skied on the ski team, how much training did you do not being involved in those programs that Glenn was.
I mean, that's a good point, because there wasn't that pinpoint focus per sport, right? I did Ski USSA, I did the summer camp, and that, like Glenn did, he was really in it. And that's the type of program, that's the extracurricular program that really kind of provides you with that detailed necessity for that sport. But outside of who was in the weight room at Hopkins? It was the football guys. That's all that was doing it, and we know now that every sport, whatever you're doing, you want to get your body in shape for avoiding injuries and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
and honestly, with respect to your efforts in skiing, because you were very dedicated, the high school ski team was as much of a party as it was a sport.
That is the truth.
Okay,
I was
what's
going to
the
get to that.
And there's a lot of stories that could be told there, but anyway.
You
Is
guys
there
did
one-
seem to always be having a good time, though. Like it seemed like a good time.
I would say that classes prior to us
Yeah, that's true.
were especially notorious for that, and there's stories that we won't share on air. But I mean, skiing's a fun sport. It's competitive, and we were trying our butts off to win. But you still have a good time at it, and it's a team sport, but it's an individual sport. I don't know. I never ran track. I never did swimming. Go ahead, Marnie.
I have a follow-up question because I have very rudimentary sports questions, as our loyal viewers know. But did the female and male ski team ski together, or was this totally separate situation?
Me? Okay. We were a team, but we competed separately. So there was the girl team and the guy team, and there was always two separate runs on a hill, and they were
Okay.
cut the same, essentially. I mean, the gates were positioned, but we never went a guy against a girl, or a girl against a guy, or a man against a woman. So the girl team was either individual or the team score or team time, and guys. So no, there was never a cross.
Okay, but during the parties, were they together?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course. Okay, well, we have some comments from the peanut gallery. I can't see all of them. They're going by too fast. Troy Finn is here. He says, thanks for the education about skiing. Fun to watch, but I never took time to learn about it. Great beard, David.
Thank you, Troy. That's Troy, right? Not
Troy Finn,
Troy.
yes.
sorry.
Chris Bjork, so interesting. Cool to learn that about both of you. Chad Alt has a question, or no, a comment. Glenn, how about that game against the Bulldogs last week? Heartbreaking, but a great game. Go Sioux. Can you explain this for the non-sporty people?
No.
David, can you explain?
Sorry,
for the
Chad.
No, I dropped cable 7 years ago, so I have antenna TV. So
College hockey.
Thank you.
I figured, but I haven't been watching.
Minnesota Duluth beat Notre Dame, and there were several overtimes, I think. No, North Dakota, not Notre Dame. North Dakota.
I miss the days of paying that much attention, but a 7 and a 4-year-old kind of eat up every ounce of my being.
No chance.
Well, Doug Robertson had a question earlier too about the Mayer brothers, right? I think that's how you said it, right? They were the kings of skiing when we were growing up. Was that, much like anybody coming up in a sport, you look up to whoever the pros were, the top guys were. How much attention did you pay to Phil Mayer when we were kids?
Oh, he was my idol, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, we didn't have a lot of stars in skiing back then. There weren't a lot of people to look up to. And, Phil and Steve Mayer certainly were. As the years went by, we started to almost dominate the sport. But back then, yeah, Phil and Steve Mayer. That was it.
It was all Austrians and Swiss and stuff, right?
Right. And
so
now
the
two of the
Americans-
greatest of all time are from right here in Colorado. So in Lindsey Vonn and Michaela Schifrin. So
Oh yeah, cool. Well, Lindsey Vaughn, she's got Minnesota roots, right? I
Yeah,
forget
she
what
started
her.
skiing at Buck Hill. She's from Lakewood.
Oh.
That's
Yeah.
great.
In fact, Buck Hill, I believe this might, well, we'll call it true. Buck Hill has turned out more Olympians than any other single ski resort in the nation.
It has a lot of them.
I'll attach to that. That's great. I love
That's
that.
because of the rope tow and the repetitive training that you can do there versus being on a big mountain hill and having to ride the chairlift and do all that stuff. So
Funny.
Okay, we have a question from one of my pals. Mike Case is here,
Hey,
and he says, Glenn, did I miss your discussion of ski jammers? A little bit. We talked about that enough.
yeah, we touched on it.
Talk about ski jammers, because that was like a club for kids, right? I mean, I think there were a couple different ones, and ski jammers was a big one.
Yeah, I mean, it was every Saturday. It was a great program. You had volunteers that were coaches and you would you would graduate up the echelon, and they would have these little chevrons that you'd get on your arm if you would get different colors and pass certain tests. And it was a fantastic way to learn to ski. It really was, and you know, and socialize and all that stuff. So yeah, it was fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to switch it to the children a little bit. So do you have any funny stories about showing your children skiing or snow or anything like that? Do they like skiing? David,
Well,
you can.
when my kids were young, we lived in I lived in the Vail Valley. So literally my daycare for my kids was Beaver Creek Resort. So my kids, when I would drop them off in the morning, that's where they would go to daycare.
Wow.
Yeah, my wife worked for Vail Resort, so we would get discounted lessons, and then that's where they went to daycare every day. So yeah.
Your daughter races now.
My daughter now is a ski racer, and my son wants nothing to do with skiing. So, you know, that's how that turns out.
Yeah.
How about you, David?
I have shown my oldest, he said 2 years of skiing, but years of skiing equals 2 times 2 years ago and 2 times last year, or pre-COVID, and then we didn't go this year. And my youngest, who's 4, has the body mentality for it, because he's a fearless, doesn't care about injury. Where my older, the 7-year-old, is a little more cautious, but he got it. He's athletic, but he doesn't have that, what I was talking kind of about with Glenn, having some a little bit of the less of the fear of. So he hasn't been on the slopes yet. I was hoping this year, but we didn't do it, and hopefully next year. So I don't have that many stories.
Yeah.
My daughter's 14 and sees snow maybe once a year, and she just screams with joy. We were in Portland during the epic ice storm, and it was snowing, and she just like ran out there, and it was just like the greatest, just to see the joy on her face, and just it's so beautiful, right? When you only see it once a year. It's magical.
Yeah, unless it's 30 below zero, which we get here all the time. So.
Right.
We went from 70 degrees yesterday to high of 37 today. That's just Minnesota.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So who was the coach of the ski? Well, okay. This is our segue into, we ask everybody if they've got, if there are teachers in particular that they grew up with, either at Hopkins High School or before, who have stuck with them over the years. Glenn, first of all, who was the Hopkins ski coach, and was that person really a coach, or were they sort of like a chaperone at the hill? And do you have any other influential people that you remember?
You know, I'll be curious to hear David's take on this too, because Ham Kurtz, who was, you might have had him even. Did you have Ham? Social studies or whatever.
As a teacher, yeah.
Yeah. He was a great guy. And, you know, he was more than a chaperone, barely.
Love you, Ham.
For him to handle this group of people that were, you know, partying and skiing, and some were taking it seriously and some weren't, although there was definitely a camaraderie as a team, he handled it about as well as I could ever expect a teacher to handle that environment. And like David referred to, the classes above us were really rough. You know, more so than our class was. But yeah, David, what's your take on Ham as a coach?
It's exactly. I mean, we lived it. You nailed it. He was really good at that, and we had an assistant coach, George Balch, who was more of the skier technicality guy, and he was super low key, and he was a racer. Like, I don't think Ham, if your coach, he couldn't ski the gates. Like, if he couldn't show you the technique on the course, that wasn't his role as the head ski coach. And that's why we had George Balch, who could tell you, you got to start your turn earlier. You got to, all these things. But Ham fit the role really well. I've run into him a couple times at Cub Foods and Lunds and Byerly's over the last 15 years. And it's always fun. And he always talks about, which he should, Glenn Johnson's state title, which was, I mean, that was a magical season. There's no doubt about it.
You realize this if you are involved in your kids' sports at all, that like there's coaching, there's like teaching the disciplines and the fundamentals and the strategy. If you coach basketball or football, there's a lot of, you need to plan practice and know the drills and know how the game works and everything. But there's a significant percentage of coaching, which is you literally just have to make sure that the kids are all in the same place at the same time, and all the parents know what's going on. And I imagine for ski team, the infrastructure is incredible. He's got to make sure that you guys are all paid up, that the bus is where it needs to be, and insurance, who knows what all is involved. And that's probably a full-time job in and of itself, of just taking care of logistics, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the difference, like, because I played soccer, Glenn did too for a number of years, and for soccer practice, you have your last class, you go to the locker room, you get your stuff on, you go outside, you practice, and you go home. Whereas in skiing, you wait for the bus, you get your gear, you have to help log all the gates. We had to bring the gates with us. Like, they weren't.
Wow.
We load the gates into the back of the trailer, get on the bus, drive 35 minutes to the hill, set up the stuff, do our practice, unload it, get back, and then drive back to the school. It wasn't like you just go in, So yeah, you're right. The coach had a lot of that part of the.
And the captain did too, at least the acting captain.
Yeah.
What does
That's
that
a lot.
mean?
Huh?
What's an acting captain? I thought you were both were there many captains?
Well, I was, again, I'll be here, David's. So I was voted captain, and I think there was a bit of a revolt because I was never at practice. I was always practicing with my other team.
I like to believe we tied.
Okay, we tied. There we go.
Was there an election?
Yeah. Keep going, Glenn. We'll get to that, Marnie.
Yeah. So basically, however it went down, whether it was a tie or whether I was voted, either way, nobody wanted me as captain. They wanted David. So.
So my story of that is Glenn hands down deserved to be captain because he was the best skier for sure. And as the best senior besides Glenn, we don't know, tied or not. But we that 1988 was the first year that there was a dual captain. I think from 1987 to the beginning of Limburg and all those, there's always one captain of the ski team. And that was and ever since our dual captainship, there's been dual captains the entire time. But it's right. Glenn was at our practices 1 or 2 times out of the 4 because he was busy doing, and as he should have been, like that was the right place for him to be. And he should have been captain as you were because he was the best skier. If that answers the question, or am I spinning my wheels here?
Best captain isn't always the best player, though. That's true. That's true of many team sports.
Yeah. And up till that point, that kind of had been the qualification. Best skier was the captain, and that was that. Yeah. So it was good that they brought, and I think who did you have somebody helping you too that you kind of.
Well, I mean, Falkman was there.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Anyway, yeah, that's how that panned out.
In the yearbook, because you weren't, because Glenn was busy skiing when we took our yearbook photo before. going to
Oh,
practice.
geez, yeah.
And they put co-captain David Green.
Oh,
and,
that's funny.
and I was like, oh, okay. Love you, Drew.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it is.
Any other teachers, Glenn, that we've focused a lot on skiing, but not so much on school.
Not really that come to mind from high school, really. Other than, of course, Mel Jacobson, who, you know, I think meant something to just about everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Ham was my guy. Yeah, I enjoyed him. I would love to run into him sometime.
That's really neat. We had, you know, I skied on the cross country ski team, and our coach was Pat Lannon, who was not Ham Kurtz in terms of, you know, sort of approach and tone and attitude and everything like that. And we had, you know, I think when you were state downhill champion, John Cookett was the state cross country champion the same year. And so we had him and I think Phil Bremer were both very talented cross country skiers. And then there was another group, and Lannon didn't really care that much about about the rest of us. He rode his horses, and then the rest of us, but every once in a while he would attempt to get us to be better. And it was mainly through bullying and humiliation and leaving you behind. So, or the threat of being left behind. If
Ham
you
didn't do that, thank you.
didn't finish, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny. It's like, you know, those guys were, I would think they're about the same age and about the same period of time coming up as teachers, and old school, both of them in many ways old school guys, but yeah, just completely different temperaments. Funny, because Lannon was influential on me for sure as a kid. And I think about what happened on those buses sometimes, and I think like, oh my God, Lannon would have been fired so fast, like just
What
inappropriate. Just politically incorrect and inappropriate and stuff. He would, I don't want to say sexual harassment, but like, you know, it was definitely off color humor most of the time. So, but I don't know, all these people, right, touch on you in different ways in terms of guiding you and correcting your attitude at a time when you're influential, when you're 16, 17 years old. And so there's some of that experience in here somewhere that helped.
Absolutely.
Dave, I don't know if we covered this when you were on with Bob Gollan. Do you have teachers? Do you have a teacher that you sticks with you?
From Hopkins specifically? I mean, Mel specifically, because he let me go up there and spend my free hour and throw pots. And when I decided to finally sign up for the course, he let me jump into the higher level course because I spent all my free hour up there learning how to throw pots.
So you took pottery, but not by being in the class, by just being up there in your free hour.
For the first part of that, yes. And Mr. Kremen, remember Mr. Kremen, English teacher, I believe. And I think he sort of, I don't know if he knew my dad, who was an English teacher at Minnetonka. I can't say he was influential, but he respected me. And except for when we had do you remember that game where we had the squirt guns?
Yeah, Assassin.
Yes, and you would get a piece of paper to see who you'd have to do to squirt and assassinate, so to speak. Terrible, not PC. Somehow I got caught by him, and he just was so disappointed in the fact that I was doing that. So I can't say that was it. I respected him for that, but he was influential to go, yeah, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing in the world to do. But anyway, no, I got along with most of my teachers, but I can't say from Hopkins there's one that at that point in time in my life,
I have a teacher question for you, David. So I've learned on the show that our homerooms were by last name alphabetical. So were we in the same homeroom, and who was your homeroom teacher? I have no memory.
I think Hutton was my homeroom teacher, maybe, but I can tell you who was in my homeroom.
Was Bob?
Because Gollin was in my homeroom. Monica Gillen was in my homeroom.
Well,
You,
then I was, wait,
you
then
were
I
in
was
my
in your
homeroom.
homeroom too. Okay, phew, Hutton.
I think it was Hutton. It was in the same room that Mr. Zapfi did his. Who was the law teacher or that did the
Law, Ken Zoffi, wasn't that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that same room because I was always late to homeroom. Always. I've since become a much more punctual person, but I think I had first hour free, so I didn't always have to get to school right away on time.
Mm.
But go forth maybe. Sorry, go
See,
ahead.
Glenn, you and I must have been in the same homeroom.
We must have, yeah.
I was in all the Johnsons. Stephanie Johnson, Tracy Johnson, Leslie Jorgensen.
Yeah.
Can you
Half the
remember
class
his
were
name?
Johnsons.
Do you remember our homeroom teacher?
No, I don't. I have
Nobody
a
remembers.
vague recollection of what she looked like. I don't remember her name though.
Mrs. Keller, and she taught like office skills.
Yep.
She was like an old school, like clerical secretary and
So let me
taught
ask you
note
this,
hand.
Jason. Was she the one that taught typing?
Elise Hope's mom was my typing teacher. And I forget her last name. It wasn't Hope, but yeah, Mrs. Keller also taught typing, I think.
Because all due respect to every single Hopkins high school teacher that taught me something, but I took that class as, an elective, and it was it has been one of the most like applicable classes I took in 1988.
Truth. My dad made me take it, and I was like, come on. And yeah, lo and behold.
Before computers took over.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it was critical. I was in that class with Pete Rich, and Pete Rich did not enjoy typing very well. It was a struggle for him, and we would just look at each other, and yeah, he didn't
Good time.
enjoy it.
Well,
but yeah, at least Hope's mom.
My last question is one of our regular questions is, of course, we are still in a pandemic. And some of us have taken up new hobbies or behaviors during the pandemic. So, David, is there anything new you've done in the pandemic that you want to share with us?
Wow. I can't really say anything new outside of growing a really long beard. And I made an ice rink outside for my kids, which still need to be taken down. It's funny because you'd think a pandemic where you're stuck inside for longer would give you the opportunity to focus on those things, and like playing guitar like I used to pre-kids, and where you could spend 5 hours a day, but I because I have young children, that doesn't happen. So I haven't really done anything different outside of no, I haven't done anything new.
You're like principal, guidance counselor, teacher, lunch lady of your homeschool, right? I mean, you're doing.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of that. Although, now my kids so Jasper's or the oldest is in school, and the youngest is in Montessori. So there is some time out, and we just moved in July. So I think my new role during the pandemic is getting the new house in order.
That makes sense.
Critical.
Yeah.
That's cool about Montessori. I'm a Montessori kid and parent, so I have some.
Me too.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to give your children.
Montessori?
Yes.
Where did you go, Marnie? Sorry, Glenn.
I went to a Montessori school in St. Louis Park. I don't even remember the name. And then my daughter has been in Montessori since she was 2, and she is now in 9th grade. So that's 13 years.
Steve Simon and I went to the same Montessori school.
Oh, really? What town?
Hopkins.
Oh, in Hopkins. I was in St. Louis Park. Yeah, so my daughter, though, we are choosing, she's going to go to a great, wonderful, large public high school in Portland. So she's been Montessori'd and is ready to go into the big world.
Right on.
Nice.
Right on.
Glenn, any pandemic hobbies for you?
Yeah. I've gotten very involved in cryptocurrency.
Aha. Falkman was telling us about this just last week.
I did catch that. Yeah. So I never would have dreamed that would have been something I would get interested in, but yeah,
Okay.
it grabs you.
Okay, no, tell me why? Why? Like, what happened? I'm very curious about it because it seems a little bit very mysterious and revolutionary at the same time. So can you just tell us a little bit before we wrap up?
Well, I think Drew did a pretty good job explaining it when he was on. So it's sad.
Okay, I'm going to follow up, Drew, if you're listening. He explained it a lot, but it made it more mysterious to me. So can you explain?
Over my head.
Okay, I'll be clear. I'll ask a question. For
Okay.
someone like me, I'm interested in it. And he tried to explain it to me. And I was like,
Like, yeah.
yeah, like, can you, Glenn, explain
Oh no.
why?
This
why-
week on explaining Bitcoin to Marnie.
Tell
Are
me
You do.
Are you picking on my hobby?
why? Why?
Well, yeah, it's a fair question. It's interesting, and there's endless amounts of information to learn. There's new emerging technologies, and it's fascinating to see. For those that are into cryptocurrency, you can kind of see that that's the future of things on some level, whether it be currency, which probably not, but maybe so, or just technologies in the way we interact with various things in our world. So they're moving in that direction, and it's fun to learn which technologies might become a everyday part of what we do.
Okay.
That's well said.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jason, how's this for a journalist question? If I had to learn about one cryptocurrency this week, is there one that you think, Marnie, like which one should I Google?
Ethereum.
Ethereal?
Ethereum, yes.
Ethereum. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Check that one out. That'll give you a good kind of basic understanding of what it is. Bitcoin doesn't represent it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This is great. This is great. This has turned into a Bitcoin podcast. All right.
I already have after Falkman was on, I texted him and said, all the things you said about the things, can you explain about the things? Right.
Glenn, I'm going to follow up. Jason, forgive me, everyone. So there's this, I heard on PRI radio that there's a bunch of cryptocurrency obsessed people in Puerto Rico. Is this true, Glenn? Do you know about these guys?
It's all over the world. Yeah.
Okay, you don't know, but they're trying to buy Puerto Rico with cryptocurrency.
Well, a lot of people that have done very well investing in cryptocurrency move there. The government of Puerto Rico has made it appealing from a tax standpoint as a kind of a haven to go there.
Okay.
So buying it or not, I don't know.
Okay, and then I swear, Jason, I'm sorry, but Doug's nagging us. Doug Robertson seems to be raising one last cryptocurrency question.
This is even weirder.
I'm sorry I brought this up.
No, it's good. It's funny.
Explain NFT now.
Like, explain NFT now after you explain cryptocurrency.
NFT, well, to keep it brief, it's basically collectibles that are on the blockchain. So think of like baseball cards in cyberspace, kind of a thing like that. Or, gosh, I could go off for a long ways, but basically we'll keep it to collectibles on the blockchain.
I'm calling
That's
you.
Thank you.
I'm calling Falkman, and then I'm going to call you to have you explain this to me over the phone, Glenn.
We'll all meet up in Puerto Rico next year. It'll be
There you
Yes.
go. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Hey,
you.
Marnie, we've arrived at the time of the show where we talk about who's coming up next.
Oh, yes. I am just so into cryptocurrency. It's just something, it's such an intellectual thing that I feel like I really someday will understand. But I'm moving on. Next week, we have Bonnie Blader and her mystery guests who are not mysteries
We
anymore.
know who they are.
They're not on my list.
Sherry Crawford and Jennifer Gauger.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
More Gatewood.
Wow.
Awesome. Okay, April 13th, the softball team, Patty Hegry, get ready. April 20th, Katie Keene and pals. May 4th, Jim Keene and Brian Olson. May 11th, Eric Haugen brings on some football team players. May 18th is my 50th birthday party. Bring your own cake. And May 25th, we now have Mike Hans calling in from Guadalajara, Mexico.
Nice.
Wow.
I'm going to
Could be
join
great.
that Eric Haugen one to talk about how he laid me out in football practice.
I think we all have those stories. Do you have a story like that, Glenn? Did Haugen take you out in football?
No, I don't think so. But I definitely, yeah, there was an aggressive nature in the sporting world with Eric.
That's good. Yeah, he stiff-armed me, and that was an eye-opener, literally and figuratively. Like, we're doing that now? Like, yeah, good. That'll be fun.
Quick shout out to you, Jason, and you, Marty, for continuing this quite entertaining and quite bonding event that you guys have created. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic that you guys take the time to do this every week.
Thanks. It's keeping us sane, right, Marnie? This is our COVID hobby. So
Well, I would say I appreciate your kindness and your great, Jason and I enjoy it. And I really enjoy focusing on just one conversation with a few of us and being kind of in depth. And I really care about all of us. And it's just really nice to hear the new memories and old memories and learning about cryptocurrency.
Oh.
all right, I think that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck taking down that ice rink, Green, and good luck to you out in Denver, Glenn.
Yep,
Thank
and don't forget, everyone, we have the KHOP88 map. So if you want to see who
That's right.
lives in your state, I will post the link in the comments.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Glenn Joe, good to see you.
You
Good
too, Dave.
night.
Take care, guys.
Take care, guys. See ya.